Deep drilling. Love it or hate it, this is Rimworld's answer to infinite resources. It's fair, it's balanced, and it makes sense. But imagine this, you've just finished mining a vein of resources, and you've accidentally unforbid it once it's finished. An absolute nightmare, it's not good, and now you've got an absolute shed load of stone chunks and you've wasted your time. Introducing the stone into steel, a hyperwave adventure. This mod aims to just sort of solve that answer for when you've accidentally gotten yourself an absolute shed load of stone chunks, and what do you do with it? This is a mod that I found, and I was actually really intrigued by the fact that this has been updated since 1.1, but has no ratings or anything on the Steam Workshop page, and I thought, let's give this mod creator the benefit of the doubt, and let's see how good it is. Let's get into things and let's start with the content. So as every good mod review starts, let's look at my first impressions of the content. The Steam Workshop page, this is where it all started for me, it's where we'll start for you. Now looking at everything, it starts with a fairly nice pitch, it tells you what the mod does vaguely, shows you the research selection, very nice. It's got a basic description, and as we move further down the page, it tells you what's in the mod and everything. Could be nice to have some graphics here for this, and then most importantly, it has the 1.5 update list, extremely well detailed. It's everything that this mod adds for the 1.5 update that the mod creator's done is listed here. This is kind of a decent Steam Workshop page, I'm not gonna lie. It would be nice to see some graphics and everything. This thick chunk of text is slightly off-putting, I'm not gonna lie.
Damn, boy, he's thick!
But still, it does the job. So after I read the Steam Workshop page and attempt to ingest all of that fantastic block of text like I'm just trying to swallow a bunch of cardboard, let me show you what's in the actual mod in-game. We have one workbench, and then we have one item type. That is it. I'm going to be treating this mod more so than a content-heavy mod that actually provides things into game, but more of a utility mod that provides purpose to your playthroughs. There's a lot on screen that I'm not able to show you in terms of content because they are menu builds. So to make a long story short, most of the content within this mod is basically builds added to workbenches. Builds that turn metallic dust, which is the main component of this mod, into other things. It turns it into steel, uranium, plasteel. It adds so many different variations to your base game ability to do more things, which is the content at heart. It allows you to turn things that are kind of useless late game, mid game, even early game into things that are very useful. All things that mid to late game we run very short on, and this mod very nicely fills that gap for us. So the metallic dust, what does it do and why have I spoken about it? The metallic dust is the main component of this mod in order to make more things. The metallic dust is made using the electromagnetic sieve.
Good job!
You try say that a few times whilst you're drunk or something and you'll be having a fantastic time as well. The electromagnetic sieve takes stone chunks, any stone chunk you fancy, whether that be chocolate chip or just that bloke down the road from you, and you turn it into the metallic dust. The metallic dust is then turned into more things using a separate process. The metallic dust is extremely important in this mod, and it acts as a lightweight component for a lot of things. So that's going to be it in terms of content for this mod. Like I said, this is pretty much a utility mod. There's not much here, but it does provide a lot of new things for you to be able to do with it in your playthroughs. I'd like to maybe see a little bit more content here. I'd maybe like to see even a few more builds added throughout the lifetime of this mod, and I'd like to also see maybe a few variations of the metallic dust, because I don't feel like it's necessarily appropriate to be able to make the same metallic dust into plasteel as I can with steel. It doesn't quite seem right. So in that regard entirely, I'm going to be giving the content here a 7 out of 10. Definitely think it's good, and I like the concept of it. I would maybe just like a little bit more of a specialization and a nicheness between the different value of items made and the quality provided. Next, let's move on to my opinions of the quality. So when looking at the quality of this mod, we need to bear in mind what I've previously said. This is more or less a utility mod. So there's not much we can look at here, but I will be zooming in and out on the things provided here. So first, the metallic dust. It looks good. I like the design of it. We've zoomed in quite far here, so I mean, we are going to see some discrepancies here and there. I still think this looks good. I like it. It works. My issues come with the actual electromagnetic sieve table itself. It doesn't seem to really fit. I can't tell if this is futuristic, industrial. I can't tell if it's sci-fi. It's a bit weird, and I'm not actually that impressed with the quality of it, in fact. And there's a lot of previous mods I've reviewed where the tables don't necessarily fit into things, but this one really takes the cake over that. I'd love to see this to be updated with a different mod, or just the mod creator looking into the quality of this, but I think this is the one area of improvement I'd like to see. So countering the negative that comes with the lack of quality in the electromagnetic sieve texture qualities, we look into something that I was actually super impressed with. I always go through the descriptions of every item when I go look into these mods. I look and see if there's anything interesting there, and when I got to the research tab that is obviously separated from base game Rimworld, I was blown away. There's like a whole story in the research tab. It's like I'm reading like Game of Thrones or something within this Rimworld mod. There's like a whole story of your researcher progressing in his learning experience and finding out new things, recycling, stuff like that, and it's really interesting. It feels like the mod creator has just kind of put their heart and soul into the story of the mod. Despite there not being any sort of stories basis within this mod, they've added a story to it, and I think that's such a lovely touch, and the personality of the mod creator really comes through in that, and that does bring warmth to my heart, and I really appreciate that. And so unfortunately that's going to be about it in terms of the quality of this mod. Bearing in mind, this is a small mod. There's not much here that I could have shown to you, and what I'm going to be expecting from a small mod of this size is the quality is top notch. I was, however, let down by the graphics of the electromagnetic sieve, but I was obviously very impressed by the story elements that were added by the research tab. I think I'm very comfortable giving the quality of this mod a 6 out of 10. Definitely could be better, but obviously I do like different parts of it. I just feel like we need just a little bit more, and especially with a mod of this size, it needs to be tip top. Next, let's move on to the balancing. So next, we're looking at the biggest subject of this mod review. The section of this mod review that will basically make or break whether or not I recommend this mod to you. The balancing. When it comes to infinite resources and being able to access them, it has to be balanced. Otherwise, we'll have a certain situation with another mod where it's just absolutely ridiculous and it's almost infamous for it. This mod has to be balanced. So first, let's look at the resource cost of the stone chunks to metallic dust comparison and go from there. So in order for me to be able to confidently direct you as to whether or not the metallic dust ratios are balanced or not, I've had to do maths. I've had to use my brain, and I've even actually used a notepad here in order to write things down and calculate things correctly. Now, the mod adds 2 recipes for metallic dust. 1 stone chunk to equal 12, and 5 stone chunks to equal 75 for metallic dust. So what I did was I took 75 and divided it by 5 in order to get the amount for 1 stone chunk in metallic dust, and I took 12 and times it by 5 in order to try equal that amount for 75. So 12 times 5 equals 60, and 75 divided by 5 equals 15. Therefore, 1 stone chunk is less efficient than doing 5 stone chunks. Do you read me? Do you follow this? So, it is more efficient to use 5 stone chunks to make 75 metallic dust in 1 sitting. Now, this isn't taking in the time to do this or anything else. This is just efficiency of resources. So bearing that in mind, let's look at the other cost of resources. So in order to make resources in this mod, they all require metallic dust. And as I've just proven, it is more efficient to use 5 stone chunks to make 75 metallic dust. So that is what we'll be using as the amount of metallic dust to equal the resource. So let's start with steel. 10 steel requires 1.3 recurring stone chunks to make 10 steel. 50 steel requires 6.6 stone chunks. 10 uranium requires 4.6 recurring stone chunks, 10 plasteel requires 1.6 recurring stone chunks, and 50 plasteel requires 8.3 recurring stone chunks. This maths may be slightly off because I don't do maths, I am just a young lad. But from this, you're kind of getting the vibe that as long as you've got enough stone chunks, you're going to be able to kind of access infinite resources at your leisure. Who actually runs out of stone chunks in their Rimworld playthrough? Nobody does. They're super easy to access and you've got absolutely loads of them. The only way I can see this being unbalanced is if you've got loads of other mods that you're running, where you've got auto crafters and everything. That's the only time that I'm going to see this as being overpowered. Potentially, arguably, the plasteel cost for just 10 plasteel being at 1.6 recurring stone chunks may be a little bit unbalanced, but I mean, from what my math says, this seems to be pretty balanced actually. So with those big numbers out of the way and my brain can take a rest, let's look at the rest of the items that you can make within this mod and let's see if they are actually balanced or not. First, I'm going to look at synthread. In order to make 20 synthread, it requires 10 chem fuel. A little bit silly, I'm not gonna lie. Moving on to the hyperweave, we have a bill here that creates 20 hyperweave for 2 gold, 5 plasteel, 20 synth thread, and 20 metallic dust. Once again, seems a little bit unbalanced, but at the same time, not at the same time, because it requires various work skills to make this, which is kind of a balancing point. And then last but not least, we have a synthetic replacement for a flak vest, a flak jacket, and flak pants. What this basically does is remove the component cost and remove the cloth cost and replace it with a synth thread cost. Now, bearing in mind the cost of 20 synth thread is 10 chem fuel. This is quite OP. I will add as well that the flak vest, the flak jacket, and the flak pants all have the exact same stats as base game stuff. It's just made with a different recipe, which definitely is a little bit on the more overpowered side. So I've listed quite a few things in a very short space of time that all seem very overpowered. I'm not gonna lie, it all does come across as being overpowered. I mean, when is accessing infinite resources not overpowered? I think the big balancing thing here that's not actually implemented on purpose, I don't think, is time. This is so time heavy to use a deep drill to get the stone chunks, to turn it into something else, to then use it to make something else. You're looking at like 3, 4, 5 processes to get the item that you want. This adds an extra 1 or 2 processes in some accounts that it makes this mod balanced. Accessing the infinite resources then is such a chore that unless you're using so many other mods and you've got so many slaves, you're not going to be able to access these infinite resources easily, which is what we want to see. So, balancing. Is this mod balanced? Yes or no? Yes, I think this mod is balanced. Comparing it to Rimworld base game, which is what we do in these mod reviews, this mod is inherently balanced to base game Rimworld. I think the issue comes with unbalancing when we're using this with loads of other mods that add so many different ways to make things and different more efficient processes that are not guaranteed. The mod on its own makes sense, and I think it does really bridge that gap between not being able to use a deep drill because we've got no resources on the map, and then being able to get resources with more processes. The time balancing here is key in my opinion. Yes, there it is tech locked at certain stages, but the time is so much more imperative and important in a lot of your playthroughs. It just balances everything out almost perfectly. So I think for balancing, I'm actually going to be giving it an 8 out of 10. I'm genuinely impressed that it's managed to balance itself out, not necessarily by design, but with time. And I think that makes sense, in my opinion. Next, let's move on to the compatibility. So next, compatibility. Are there any bugs that I need to let you know about, and how is this going to work with your playthroughs? Now, in my opinion, I had no issues with bugs whatsoever. I had no issues with anything, and everything worked smoothly, which is what I like. However, the mod creator does very nicely put in the description of the mod page that if you are playing with a mod that removes steel, chunks, the smithy, or the smelter, you will probably have issues with this. In my opinion, I've not played with any mods ever, really, that remove any of these things, so hopefully you're not having these issues very regularly. Then how does this fit in with your playthroughs? Now, in my notes, I've written down industrial ? I think the basis and the way this mod works is very industrial. It would fit really well with a factory-based playthrough, and maybe even a playthrough where you're just farming absolutely shed loads of resources and you want to build something expensive. But the design of the workbench is slightly on the more futuristic side, and I don't know if it would fit into your military-based faction stuff, having the electromagnetic sieve. Even with a name like an electromagnetic sieve, it doesn't quite fit with the industrial theme that I think it's going for here. I think for pretty much any playthrough you're doing that's industrial and above, this will be absolutely fine and a really, really good addition to your playthrough. So I think for compatibility, I'm very comfortable giving it another 8 out of 10. Next, let's move on to my mod recommendations. So as we get into my mod recommendations, it's very important to note here that this mod review has currently been recorded in the unstable 1.5 branch of Rimworld. Therefore, not every single mod that I want to recommend with this mod has been updated. I've selected a few, but there are hundreds more that I want to be able to show you guys, but can't because they haven't been updated. First, let's start with the quarry mod. This is a classic mod, and whilst this does also provide infinite resources, it also provides infinite chunks. I use these chunks to get all the resources you want of a more specialized fashion. Perfect for your playthrough. Next, we've got the Rimworld mod. Use the resources you're creating to turn it into even better things. Fantastic mod as well. Next, Tunnel and Underground have access to just like infinite chunks. Who can say no to that? And last, the Go Explore mod. Add loads of new events and everything, and more reasons for you to go explore to get more chunks. All these mods that I've recommended here have been updated to 1.5, and all the other mods that I want to be able to recommend to you have not. I think for mod recommendations, this mod fits in basically any playthrough that you're doing that is industrial and above. So as long as you're playing with a mod pack that fits that, this is going to work with everything. I think for mod recommendations, I'm going to go for a 9 out of 10 here, only marking it down because it does only fit in industrial and above. Lastly, let's go on to my conclusion. So as we enter our conclusion here, I need to mention, I'm genuinely surprised that this mod isn't on more people's radar. I'm genuinely surprised that this has no ratings on Steam, and the comment section for it is basically bare. The 1.5 update that's been added to it is made an absolute revelation to this mod, and I really think you should check this out. But let's get into the scoring. For content, it received 7 out of 10. For quality, 6 out of 10. Balancing and compatibility also received 8 out of 10. My mod recommendations gave it a 9 out of 10, giving it the grand total score of 38 out of 50, giving it a solid B-tiered rating. This mod should be on everybody's radar. It fills that gap for when you've got way too many stone chunks, you don't know what to do with them, and it's just there to do things for you. Now, I know there are other mods that do this, and they do take away stone chunks and turn them into better things, but this one feels balanced, mainly for the time. I can't stop going on about it because it's time balanced, which makes so much sense. The one thing we value most in lives is our time, and this mod takes advantage of us and absolutely bends us over and ruins us if we want to take advantage of it. It's crazy, honestly. It's like being in prison, you know? And I think this is a totally fair score for it to give it a B rating. I think that there could be definitely some improvements made to the quality here, specifically the electromagnetic sieve. Like, is it futuristic? Is it industrial? But that is a very small change, but it somehow makes a big difference to me. Make that make sense. So yeah, if you have enjoyed this mod review, please remember to like, subscribe, and make sure you tell your mum about me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.